Hey there, it's Dave Altavilla for Hot Hardware, and this is Microsoft's new Surface 3 hybrid 2-in-1 Windows tablet convertible. It's currently powered by Windows 8.1, though Windows 10 will undoubtedly come to the device as a free upgrade when it's released in late July this year. The Surface 3 has a spacious 10.8-inch 1920 by 1280 IPS display with a 3:2 aspect ratio, and it's gorgeous and sits up pretty with its built-in kickstand and its snap-in magnetic type cover. The Surface 3 tablet itself weighs just 1.37 pounds and measures 0.34 inches thick. For the base spec price of just $499, you'd think it's a pretty great deal for a full-up Windows 8 tablet with 2 gig of RAM and 64 gigs of flash storage. But we would suggest the 128 gig model with 4 gig of RAM is a better option, and that will set you back $600. Drop in the optional type cover for $130, and the bundle now weighs in at $730 total, which is pretty pricey for an Intel Atom-powered machine, although the Surface 3 is powered by a higher-end Intel Atom X7 Z8700 quad-core with 2 meg of cache and a base frequency of 1.6 gigahertz and a 2.4 gigahertz boost clock. It's not the Intel Atom of old and definitely gets the job done well for this class of device. Microsoft has a number of optional accessories for the new Surface 3, including a docking station for $199 that plugs into the Surface 3's USB 3 port and micro USB power connector. It also has a magnetized location for hanging the optional $50 Stylus pen, and it brings out a pair of USB 3 ports, a headphone jack, 2 USB 2 ports, gigabit Ethernet, and a DisplayPort video output. Incidentally, that micro USB sync and charge port might not be as slick, perhaps, as the previous generation's magnetic power connector, but it does allow for charging from literally any standard micro USB AC adapter that has enough juice to power the device. The optional $130 type cover still attaches to the Surface 3 with the same strong, satisfying click. And there's a second secured magnetized position that angles the typing deck up towards you a bit more for more comfortable ergonomics. The typing experience is fairly solid, but key travel is obviously a little shallow. The touchpad area is also rather small, but the optional pen stylus does a nice job of adding input utility for drawing and writing without having to muck up the screen. Incidentally, the Surface 3's kickstand has only 3 positions, unlike the Surface 3 Pro's kickstand, which fully articulates. However, the Surface 3 is comfortable enough, whether on your desk or in your lap. On the right edge of the device, you'll find its headphone jack, a micro USB sync and charge port, a USB 3 port, and a mini display port output. On the top edge is where you'll find the power button and screen lock switch, as well as the volume rocker. On the front of the display is a 3.5 megapixel web camera, and on the rear of the Surface 3 you will find its 8 megapixel rear-facing camera with autofocus and microphone. And what you're not seeing here is the Surface 3's micro SD card slot, which hides just behind the kickstand on the back. Incidentally, the Surface 3 has been upgraded over the Surface 2 with 802.11 AC Wi-Fi capability as well, and of course Bluetooth 4. One of the more impressive features of the Surface 3 is its display. It's vibrant, balanced, and very bright at 430 nits output, which is maybe the brightest display we've seen in a tablet or 2-in-1 yet. With a 3:2 aspect ratio and 1920 by 1280 Full HD resolution, 10-point multi-touch, and Surface Pen support, it's definitely the highlight of the design. And when it comes to a tablet hybrid device like this, the display is a very important thing to consider, and Microsoft nailed it. Unfortunately, where Microsoft fell short was in the selection of the solid-state drive that's powering the Surface 3. Though at first glance, some might be eager to point fingers at its Atom X7 Z87 processor, that is not the bottleneck. However, the 128GB Samsung MDGA GC SSD that's on board this device is dog slow, relatively speaking anyways, as solid-state drives go. We measured about 45 megabytes a second in write throughput and only 170 megabytes a second in read throughput on the Surface 3 SSD. And it's why this 2-in-1 hybrid feels a little pokey now and again, loading up apps or when multitasking. Microsoft could have easily found a flash stick that hits north of 500 megabytes a second for reads and writes, and that would have been a much better option for the Surface 3. It's a bit of a letdown, to be honest. Elsewhere, performance-wise, the Surface 3 handles just fine, and it's able to hang with some of the top 10-inch slates on the market today. Here in 3D Mark Ice Storm, we're testing the graphics prowess of its Intel Cherry Trail Atom X7 Z87 SoC and its integrated Intel HD graphics engine. As you can see, it handles testing quite well. In fact, performance is about on par with an iPad Air 2 in this test, beating the iPad Air 2 in its overall Ice Storm score, losing by a hair in its graphics score, but trouncing the iPad Air 2 in its physics processing. Regardless, an overall score north of 25,000 in this test puts the Surface 3 right up near the top of the pack in this benchmark, with a very respectable score overall. All told, the new Microsoft Surface 3 is pretty much the sum of its parts. It has a decent processing engine, a gorgeous display, excellent build quality, and all the support and compatibility a full-blown Windows notebook brings, but in the form factor of a 2-in-1 tablet convertible. And it certainly doesn't hurt that Microsoft throws in a free subscription to Office 365 for a year to sweeten the deal. However, with its lackluster, almost slow file system performance and relatively high cost when you consider a 4 gig of RAM setup with a type cover will set you back $700, it's hard to recommend the Surface 3 if you're considering an ultralight notebook or tablet convertible like this. In fact, there may be better values in other Windows 8 convertibles like the Core M-powered Asus T300 Qi, for example, which can be had for under $700 in a 4 gig of RAM, 128 gig SSD variant. Or, if you need more juice and portability to go with it, a Microsoft Surface 3 Pro may be a better option. Make sure you stop by HotHardware.com for our full review with all the benchmark details and analysis, and thumb up this video if you liked it, and subscribe to us here for more reviews, event coverage, and our 2.5 Geeks webcast. I'm Dave Altavilla for Hot Hardware with Microsoft's Surface 3. Thanks for stopping by.